generally speaking, what do you think of UAP sightings? Which,
I
if
think
any, seem credible to you?
I haven't seen convincing evidence beyond the reasonable doubt so far, but it's possible that the reason for that is the most convincing evidence is classified because it was collected by classified sensors that the US government has access to, because there are people within government talking about very unusual objects, but I haven't seen data that confirms that. And of course, if pilots tell me that they saw, and I spoke with Ryan Graves and others, and they say that they had seen unusual things. That is not sufficient for a scientist because I want to see the data from instruments that I have full control over, that are calibrated. And also I wanted to get such data from a systematic survey of the sky. And that's what we are doing in the Galileo Project that I'm leading. The main difference between anecdotal reports where a pilot happened to be at the right place at the right time compared to a systematic study of the sky is that in a systematic study of the sky, you monitor the sky all the time and you figure out what is the noise, what kind of birds or balloons or airplanes or drones you happen to see quite frequently. And that constitutes the background. And then on top of that, if you see something unusual, you know how to calibrate it. But if you happen to see something unusual by chance, you don't know whether it's background or whether it's real. You can't calibrate the statistics of how frequently it happens and how rare it is. And the worst is actually to go to places where there is a lot of background. Some people argue, the war in Ukraine is a good place to be in. Who knows? Maybe there are UAP there, and there were some reports by astronomers about it. I don't think that's a good idea because that's a place where you have lots of things flying in the sky, and you will have a hard time distinguishing between a drone and something unusual. Simply because you're not aware of all the classified drones and perhaps even satellites that are being used for espionage over there. So it's much better to go to the Sahara Desert where there is nothing, or Alaska or the South Pole. These are sites where there is not much activity and the noise level is smaller. So any signal there would be intriguing.
What about these videos that were released by the Pentagon, for example?
They were not convincing. I mean, they showed some motions that perhaps look unusual, but in fact, there is the new office in government, the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office under the Pentagon, that started looking into hundreds of cases where military personnel reported things. And the claim by the director of that office, AARO, Sean Kirkpatrick, is that only a few % of the reports are indeed anomalous, that in fact they can figure out that, maybe 97% of them are drones, balloons, have mundane explanations. So it shows you that it must be a mixed bag. And in fact, the strongest correlations you find between reports about UAP is with population density, basically telling you that the more eyes are looking at the sky, the higher the likelihood of a report would be. And it's probably because there are balloons everywhere, there are drones everywhere. So the more people look at the sky, the more reports you get. But it doesn't mean that there are so many unusual objects. It's just that it's difficult to figure them out with relatively, a low-level instrument.
The more I listen to you, the more you seem skeptical, but not outright dismissive of these claims. For example, David Grush or UFO sightings.
I should tell you that as of now, I'm leading the only scientific project which is trying to figure out what UAP are. And that means that I'm intrigued by these reports and I try to figure it out. I know that the government cares about it. I know that the public is very interested. So it's, I think, the duty of scientists to help and figure out what these things are and get to the bottom of them. And so that's what we are doing with the Galileo Project. Mm-hmm. We have an operating observatory at Harvard University, and it's collecting data 24/7 in the infrared, optical, radio, and audio. And we use machine learning software to figure out whether we are looking at a bird, at a drone, at an airplane, balloon, or something else. So I'm taking it seriously in the sense that I want to figure it out. And hopefully within the coming years, the Galileo Project will shed some light on the nature of these objects. And as a scientist, even if 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000 objects appears to be unexplained, not from this earth, that would be a great triumph, because we will discover that we are not alone. Okay. For the government, the motivation is completely different. They want to protect the nation, and so they want to know what most of the objects are, whether they are Chinese, Russian, or anything else. And human-made objects are obviously their focus. So in a way, I see the work of a scientist as complementary to the work of government. Anything that was made in China is very boring as far as I'm concerned.
Staying with X-Files and men in dark suits and sunglasses for a final time, you are one of the most well-known scientists who is actively searching for evidence of extraterrestrial life. Has anyone from a secret agency ever contacted you? And would you tell me if they had?
I would tell you.
If you can't say it out loud, Professor, please just nod twice.
I was never approached, maybe because I'm just following the scientific method where, I'm not seeking any classified data. I'm not trying to convince government to do one thing or another. I mean, they have their day job, and we are not in position to tell them to declassify data. I'm just trying to pursue my work as a scientist because the sky is not classified. It's only the instruments that look at the sky that are classified. And also the oceans are not classified. So I'm just doing scientific work in the open, completely transparently, without hiding anything. And I'm doing it the way science does it. Now, of course, most of my colleagues, they focus on very distant objects, on questions about the universe at large. I say, let's look at our backyard and see if there is any unusual object there. And it's just like going to your backyard near your home and checking everything to see if there is any tennis ball that was thrown by a neighbor. That's a reasonable proposition as far as I'm concerned, because we sent 5 probes to interstellar space: Voyager 1, Voyager 2, Pioneer 10, Pioneer 11, and New Horizons. And that's just over half a century. And you can imagine other civilizations that existed for billions of years before us, because most of the stars formed billions of years before the sun. And we know that a significant fraction of them have a planet the size of the Earth, roughly at the same separation. And with chemical propulsion, the kind of rockets that we send, you can traverse the Milky Way galaxy in 500 million years. So they could have arrived here to our doorstep or sent something that would arrive here. And obviously, if they arrive to our doorstep before we will arrive to their doorstep, they're more advanced than we are, or at least they preceded us. So we can learn from them. So I see it as an opportunity to learn. And that's why I'm interested. It has nothing to do with me trying to gain any knowledge that is of national security importance. And that's why perhaps the government doesn't really care about it.
All right. Thank you to my lovely patrons, Taichi, Carmen, and Veronica. Thank you for your support. You're amazing. If you want to support Eurotrash too, you can do that. Just go to Patreon and find me there. All right. Thanks again.